Hey, my name is Rowan Smith and I want to welcome you to the Training for Trekking podcast. Now, this is the world's very first podcast which is entirely dedicated to helping you train, prepare and conquer your upcoming hike, trek or mountain adventure. So once a week, I'm going to be giving you quality and practical information on the subjects of physical preparation for trekking, dealing with altitude and nutrition on the trail, so you can know everything you need to be doing to have the best chance of a safe, enjoyable and successful adventure. So now you know what you're in for, let's get into today's episode. Alright, hello guys. Today we are talking all about jump training for hikers and trekkers. Now this is a subject which I see butchered in the fitness world in general, and when it comes down to hikers and trekkers, I see a lot of people trying to apply this type of training into their preparations, whether it's in their own programming or doing in exercise classes which they're participating in, and it's something which is just not very well done. So today I want to be talking you through what jump training is and when you might be considering using this type of training and when you probably shouldn't be. So by the end you can sort of have a bit of an insight and a bit of understanding around how to best get the benefits out of this type of training and how to best avoid the pitfalls. Now, when I'm meant to talk about jump training, it's literally what it sounds like. Any type of training which involves jumping. Now, this might be squat jumps, this might be lunge jumps, this might be broad jumps, this might be skipping, any type of training like this, anything that involves jumping. And there's a few particular things that I see again and again and again, both in the general fitness world and the hiking world, which they're trying to apply jump training into a particular method of training, and it's just not a good idea. So, for example, the few things that I see all the time is trying to use jump training for cardiovascular training. Now, this is typically used in generic exercise classes with personal trainers who might not have an incredibly wide base of exercises or a wide base of knowledge, or someone who's just purely just trying to get themselves huffed and puffed at home. It's really, really typical in any type of HIIT program you download off the internet. And this involves you doing a cardio workout and just doing lots of squat jumps, lunge jumps, broad jumps, purely just to get yourself huffed and puffed and try to progress your fitness. And yes, there is no doubt that this type of training can get you huffed and puffed and that can progress your cardiovascular fitness in certain ways, but it also comes with a massive stress on your joints. And the fact with this type of training is a little bit can be good. Doing too much is really, really going to break you down and grind you down. And if you're trying to do jump training when you're absolutely fatigued and absolutely tired, it's just not a good idea. It's going to take you down a road of pain, injury and discomfort, and it's not something I recommend. And in all honesty, doing any type of jump training as cardiovascular training is a mistake. Now, if you don't believe me, you can go into any HIIT studio in the world who do this, and you'll see probably about a quarter of their clients are probably training injured, whether they've got foot pain, knee pain, back pain, or something like that. And one of the biggest exercises which aggravate this type of stuff is just the constant jumping. And it's something that really, really I'm so passionately against, and I highly urge you to not do this type of thing. If you are looking for cardiovascular training and different options, instead of doing squat jumps, hop on a bike and do a sprint, maybe do some slam balls, maybe do something that's just not jumping around, but still going to get you huffed and puffed. There's a million and one options, and honestly, I think you can find a better way. The second thing that I see people do this really badly with their jump training is trying to use it for muscular endurance training, which is pretty similar to cardio in the sense that they're trying to get their legs nice and strong and be able to endure force again and again and again and again. And people will do this in the case of doing 20, 30, 40 squat jumps in a row, or doing lots and lots of lunge jumps. So they get that big burn in the legs and they say, look, this is going to help me go up the hill. And yes, that will improve your muscular endurance if you do lots and lots of it. Yes, it can be effective for that. But again, it has this massive downside in the case if you're doing lots of repetitions of this and you're doing it to fatigue, you're just skyrocketing that chance of injury. And it's just not a smart way of going about this training. If you're trying to develop muscular endurance, do the same thing, but just don't do the jumping. Do lots of squats, but do it with a weight and nice and slow instead of having to jump. Do lots of lunges, but with a weight again, nice and slow. Do hill intervals, do stair intervals, but don't think that you can get away with this long term just jumping and jumping and jumping. It's just not a good way of going about it. And again, I see this applied so poorly in so many gyms around the world. Next one, the last bad thing that I don't think people should be doing jump training for is trying to develop power, but by doing high repetition work. Now, jump training can be a great way of developing power and rate of force development, which is basically the speed of the muscles to produce force, or the ability of the muscles to produce force at speed. And that can be very, very effective in certain situations to develop power. But if you're trying to do lots and lots and lots and lots of repetitions of this and thinking that's developing your power, it's wrong. And so many trainers get this wrong, so many people in gyms get this wrong, and they claim this is developing your power, but it's not. To develop power with jump training, you need to do low repetitions, explosive movements, and you don't want to get tired. If you're doing high repetitions and you're getting fatigued, it's not going to be effective for power development. People still think, look, I'm still training my body to jump and produce power when I'm tired, but it just doesn't play out like that. So if someone's trying to claim that this is going to improve your power by doing lots and lots and lots of repetitions, they probably don't really know what they're talking about. So there are three big things that I don't like to see with jump training, and specifically for hikers, I do not like this type of training for them. Trying to use jumping for cardiovascular exercise, trying to use jumping for muscular endurance, and trying to use jumping as a high repetition method of developing power. However, saying this, there are a few situations, if you have put your thinking cap on and actually apply this intelligently, there's a few situations where jump training can be absolutely amazing for hikers. And I know there's a few adventure coaches out there. I was talking to Lee from Trailside Fitness about this the other day, and he does a really good job with this. I know other adventure coaches are applying this very well, but for the general trainer and the general hiker who's just sort of getting to know their training, they might not be applying this so well. So I want to talk you through a few ways of going about this. Now, first and foremost is one of my favorites, which I think is more relevant than doing lots and lots of jumping, is something that's called landing training. So basically jumping traditionally is used to develop power, in which is you're trying to develop the speed at which the muscles can produce force, which can be great in certain situations for injury prevention, can be great for sports performance, and great for a whole bunch of different things. But as a hiker, it's probably not strictly necessary, in all honesty. There's not a huge amount of situations where you need a huge amount of muscle power, unless you're specifically trying to do it as an injury prevention protocol, which has been recommended from a physiotherapist or something like that. It's probably not worth your while. However, doing landing training can be very, very effective. Now, basically what landing training involves is you simply doing the landing portion of a jump. You're not actually producing force to go up, but you're teaching the body to land and absorb force as you sort of hit the floor. So a classic example of this is doing a altitude landing, in which you'll stand on a small box, you'll step off the box and land onto the floor and just nicely absorb that force. Now, the beauty of this is it teaches the body to, well, as I said, absorb force at a high force and a high rate. So teaching the body when you're stepping down hills or something like that to handle that force, to disperse it well and to actually suck it all in. And also teaching the body to move well in this situation. And it can be very, very effective. Now, generally, I wouldn't spend a huge amount of time as a hiker doing this, but it might be something you consider doing a little bit of. Maybe at the start of your strength workouts, just doing one exercise for a few repetitions. And a few classic examples of this, which are a nice little progression that I use, is something called tall to shorts, in which it's simply involving you standing up super, super tall, arms over your head, getting lots of tension in your muscle, and then as quick as you can, going down into a crouching position. A lot of people might be like, what are you doing? That is absolutely easy. What's the point? But this is the starting process of this type of landing training. And this is the starting process of any type of power or plyometric training. And you'll go into strength and conditioning gyms in the world, all around the world, who are coaching professional athletes. And they will literally start with this exercise. And I honestly think you should as well. So it literally involves standing up nice and tall, really, really quickly going down to a crouching motion and doing that 4 or 5 times. And that's it. And then you might do the same thing, but then doing onto one leg. So going down to one leg crouch. And then you might go into an altitude landing, which you stand on a small box, step off and land on 2 legs. And then after a while of that, you might do step off a small box and land on a 1 leg. That's probably the extent of any type of landing training a hiker might do. But if applied right, it can be a really cool addition to a training program, and it might be a really, really great way of just preparing you for descents and helping your lower body absorb force a little bit better. A second option when jumping training can be pretty effective is just building up resilience in the ankles and the calves. So quite often if someone has an ankle injury Every time as we talked about previously on the podcast, every time someone sprains their ankle, they're at a much, much higher risk of re-injuring it. So they have to go through a very, very specific process of strengthening to improve the tolerance of the tendons and ligaments, improve the tolerance of the joint in general, and just get it back up to scratch. Now, generally, you'll do exercises of sort of like, direct strengthening. You might do some extra exercises improving all the muscles going further up the body, but then doing low jumping exercises. So you might be doing little hops on the spot, you might be doing skipping, you might be doing side to side hops or back to front hops. That can be a really effective way of building up strength and resilience in the ankles and in the calves so they're ready to go. That's sort of something you generally want guided by an exercise professional. If you are coming back from ankle injury, you don't really know how to apply this and when to apply it and all of that, it's probably worthwhile reaching out to a personal trainer who sort of works with these situations, because it can be a little bit tricky and it'll take a little bit of art knowing when to apply certain exercises. But that's a rare situation where it might be pretty relevant. Building off that, another situation which jumping training might be pretty relevant and pretty beneficial for a hiker or trekker is building up calf resilience and endurance. Now, quite often when we're on the trail, if we've been training for a big trek and we hit the trail, our legs are relatively all right with going day by day. So our quads, our glutes, our hamstrings, they've done all the work in our training and they're feeling pretty good. But it's quite often reported back to me from a lot of people is they've done all their training and they're feeling good. But the one muscle that really lags behind is their calves, purely because it's very, very difficult to put enough training load in the calves when you're at home. You can do plenty of calf raises when one legs and two legs with straight leg and bent leg, which is all well and good and is very, very beneficial for a hiker. But sometimes that's just not enough to prepare someone for a big day on the trail. So jumping training, and specifically things like skipping and hopping, can be a really great way of building endurance and building resilience in those calves. Now, I absolutely love skipping for this, and this is literally as simple as it sounds, getting a skipping rope and doing a little bit of skipping at the start of each session. If you can get away with that and you don't have any feet issues or knee issues or anything like that, it can be an absolutely amazing thing. Alternatively, you can do the same thing where you're just doing the same sort of jumping, it's called, without a rope, which is also known as pogo hops. And then you can progress that to single leg hopping, and you can go doing a ladder drills, which I got off Lee from Trailside Fitness, which was a great example of this type of training, in which you have one of those little agility ladders and you do hops in and out along there, or you can do hops side to side and forward and back, like with the ankle resilience. And it can be a really, really great way of building endurance in the calves. And that stuff isn't complex. It's not really going to put you a huge risk of injury or anything, because it's just little hops and you can build that up over time. So it can be very, very effective. Another situation where jumping training might be appropriate is if you genuinely do want to develop power and you're using low repetition, very, very explosive jumps to do that. So for 95% of hikers, this probably isn't incredibly necessary, but if you are interested in improving your power, improving the rate that your body can develop speed, whether that's for an injury prevention side of things or a performance side of things, or maybe you're a runner or whatever, jump training can be really, really beneficial here. So this might involve doing 4 or 5 jumps at a time, whether they're broad jumps or squat jumps, just trying to explode into the movement and having big rests in between. Now, the major difference between that and what I was talking about before is we're never chasing fatigue, we're never doing high repetitions, and you're having big rests in between sets of jumping, and that is how you develop power. And then the final reason where you may use jump training as a hiker or a trekker is if you are big into your strength training and you do enjoy lifting heavy weights, and you're doing a phase where you're trying to develop a lot of strength to prepare you for the trail. Using a little bit of jump training at the start of a strength session can often be a good way of improving the session moving forward. So for example, if you're doing some heavy squats or heavy deadlifts, if you did some jumps just at the end of your warm-up, some very, very explosive maximal jumps of maybe squat jumps or broad jumps, that can often be a great way to finish off your warm-up before you get under the bar, just to help you perform at your best when you're actually shifting that weight and moving the weight. Now, again, that's not going to be incredibly relevant for most hikers out there, because most hikers aren't going to really be going that heavy that it's really that necessary. However, if you do have a history of strength training, you love your strength stuff and you love going heavy, then that might be a good addition to the end of your warm-up, just to pump things up a little bit. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into my thoughts around jump training, and sort of gives you a little understanding when I say I don't like things like squat jumps and broad jumps and lunge jumps pull-ups and burpees for hikers. Where I'm coming from, I really don't think it's a good way of trying to develop your cardiovascular fitness, your muscular endurance, or doing high repetition work for power development. I just don't think it's very effective. I think there's much better ways of doing that, which have a much lower risk of injury. And I honestly think if you are a hiker and a trekker and you're in this situation where you've been asked to do these types of exercises, maybe choose a lower impact option. So instead of doing squat jumps, just do squats. Instead of doing lunge jumps, just do lunges, because you can get just about as many benefits from that doing those exercises as with the jumping stuff. However, if you are looking at using jumping training for landing training, for ankle resilience, for calf endurance, for developing your power, or using it at the end of your warm-up to help your strength training, then go right ahead. And I think that can be pretty effective in those situations. Now, if anyone does have any questions around this, because it is a huge subject, which I've just tried to condense into one episode, feel free to reach out to me in the Training for Hiking and Trekking Facebook group. I'm always happy to explore things in a little bit more detail on that group. So you can come on, ask a question. I'll do a video or a specific post to cover whatever you might be curious about. So feel free to join that group at any time and get involved. But aside from that, I really do hope you've enjoyed this episode today. I hope you've got a little bit of insight and a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of value. And I really hope you can take away some of these points and apply it into your own training and ultimately help your performance and success on the trail. So thank you so much for listening today, and we'll talk to you very soon. Bye.